I thought giving my family $10,000 would finally make me feel like I belonged. Instead, they locked me out of the celebration and laughed behind my back. Now I know what I really paid for. I had just wired $10,300, my hard-earned savings, to help my family patch up their collapsing roof when my phone rang. It was my cousin, Mia. I picked up, expecting a thank you. Instead, she chirped, "Oh, by the way, you're not invited to the housewarming." I froze. "What?" She repeated herself, this time sounding almost smug. "It's mostly close family." Then, as if on cue, my mom's voice slipped in from the background, soft but cutting, "You'll understand someday." I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just smiled bitterly, ended the call, and made a decision that changed everything. Within minutes, I froze the renovation account. Then I called the mortgage company and had my name pulled from the loan. By the next morning, my phone looked like it had been set on fire. 42 missed calls. And when I glanced out my apartment window, they were downstairs. Let me back up. The house situation started months earlier. Mia had her eye on this old place. She called it charming, like it was a storybook cottage instead of a money pit with shingles peeling off and a roof one storm away from caving in. My mom swore it had good bones, and my dad treated it like they just discovered buried treasure. I knew better. 6 months after the purchase, the first big rainstorm hit. Water came pouring through the hallway ceiling. The upstairs bedroom had brown stains spreading across the walls. The laundry room ceiling sagged like it was about to give way. That's when the begging began. I said no. Over and over. I reminded them I had already done more than enough. I co-signed on their mortgage. Without me, they wouldn't even have that house. That should have been the end of it. But Mia is relentless. Then came my mom, crying on the phone. And my dad, who almost never asks for anything, called me himself. He promised they'd pay me back, swore they'd even put it in writing. All they needed was $10,300 for the roof repairs. Against every instinct, I caved. But I told them flat out, this is the last time. Ever. I transferred the money. They sent me texts full of gratitude, little updates about the contractor, even pictures. For a moment, I thought maybe this time it would be different. Maybe they'd actually treat me like family, not just a safety net. Then came the call. The housewarming party I wasn't welcome at. No seat, no invitation, nothing. It wasn't about the party itself. It was what it represented. I wasn't family anymore. I was a tool they used and tossed aside. So, I froze the contractor's account. Every dollar I sent was still untouched. Then I yanked my name off that mortgage. If they wanted the house so badly, they could carry it alone. The next morning, I woke to chaos. My phone buzzing nonstop, filled with voicemails that swung from desperate to furious. By noon, I heard shouting outside my building. I walked to the window, coffee in hand. There they were. My mom screaming into the intercom. My dad pacing like a caged animal. And Mia? She was slumped on the steps, staring at her phone like this was all some cruel misunderstanding. But it wasn't. I didn't answer. I didn't go down. I just stood there, 5 floors above them, finally seeing my family for who they really were. They only remember me when they need me. And the moment they get what they want, they forget I exist. They came back again around 7 p.m. this time, just my mom and dad. I didn't even need to check the buzzer. The rhythm of it gave them away, fast, urgent, like someone pounding the door before they lost their nerve. Without saying a word, I buzzed them in. No shouting. No crying. No drama. They just walked in like they belonged there. My dad paced the length of my living room, restless energy radiating off him. My mom eased into the chair like she was waiting for her name to be called at a doctor's office. The silence stretched on until it felt heavy. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "If the contractor's account is frozen," he said, his voice almost casual, "and your name's off the mortgage, then just lend us the $10,300 directly. Please. We'll pay you back. We can sign something." He delivered it like it was a fair trade. My mom chimed in quickly, "You want to make it official? Fine, let's do it. We'll put it in writing." I just sat there, staring. A week ago, they were acting like I didn't even exist, like I wasn't worthy of an invitation to their shiny new house. And now? Now they wanted to play the part of responsible adults, suddenly eager to look honest, dependable. It would have been easier, so much easier, to say no. Honestly, it would have felt good. But I knew exactly how that story would end. Without the money, the roof wouldn't get fixed. Missed mortgage payments would start piling up. And when things fell apart, they'd show up at my door with suitcases and sob stories, asking to stay, just for a little while. I wasn't about to let that happen. So, I told them yes, on one condition. We'd draft a written agreement, signed by both of them, and reviewed by someone neutral. They looked surprised but agreed way too easily. That alone set off alarm bells in my head. 2 days later, we sat in my living room, pen scratching against paper. They signed a simple contract, repayment in monthly installments, beginning 60 days after the transfer. The contractor got his money that same day. Repairs started within a week. And then, silence. Not warmth, not hostility, just quiet. My parents only called if they absolutely had to. Mia? She evaporated. I saw photos online of her grinning under the brand new roof, throwing little parties, clinking glasses with neighbors like she'd done it all on her own. Not one mention of me. Then my Uncle Mark came into the picture. He's my mom's older brother, 10 years her senior. Never married, never tangled himself in the usual family chaos. He's one of those people who barely speaks but notices everything. You always get the sense he's listening 2 levels deeper than anyone else in the room. He stopped by their place to see the renovations. They showed off the new shingles, the fresh drywall, every corner of the house like proud homeowners. He said my mom even offered him a grilled cheese with tomato soup. Everything seemed normal. What they didn't realize was that he wasn't in the bathroom when they thought he was. He was standing just out of sight in the hallway. That's when he heard it. My dad's voice, "Has Oscar been bothering you about the contract yet?" My mom's laugh cut sharper than any blade. "Oscar still thinks we're going to pay him back. Let him. He owes us more than that for everything we've done for him." Then, almost dismissively, "He'll get over it. He always does." Uncle Mark didn't interrupt. He stood there, listening, weighing whether to walk in or keep letting them talk. Finally, he stepped back into the room like nothing had happened and finished his sandwich. The next day, he called me. "We need to meet," he said. "I've got something important to tell you." We met at a small, dim diner off the highway. He sat across from me, hands folded on the table, and repeated everything he'd heard, word for word. The voices. The tone. The laughter. I didn't interrupt. I just let it wash over me. When he was finished, he leaned back and asked, what money were they even talking about? So I told him about the $10,300, the contract, the repayment plan. He didn't react much. Just stared down at his coffee cup like he was trying to decide if it was worth another sip or if it belonged in the trash. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, anger burns out eventually. No. I stayed awake because I finally understood. The politeness. The sudden cooperation. The fake respect. It wasn't real. None of it. They never planned to pay me back. It was all an act. And the thing they didn't understand? I don't forget. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Part 3, the filing. I showed up to his office with a manila folder so thick it barely closed. Inside was everything, the signed contract, bank statements, texts confirming the amount, every single breadcrumb leading back to the $10,300. He didn't flinch when I told him the number. I guess when you deal with family lawsuits on a regular basis, nothing shocks you anymore. He read through the documents carefully, page by page, nodding slightly. They signed this willingly, he asked. Yes, I said. And they haven't made a single payment? Not even tried to talk about it. Not one. He leaned back, hands folded over his stomach. All right. We'll give them a chance to respond formally. If they don't, we move forward. That same afternoon, he drafted a demand letter, sharp, professional, polite in the kind of way that drips with hidden teeth. It spelled out the terms of the agreement, their failure to pay, and gave them 15 days to either settle or face a lawsuit. We sent it to their address and to their email. I didn't call. I didn't warn them. I just waited. 15 days crawled by. Silence. Not even a fake apology. Not even one of Mia's passive-aggressive phone calls, which, honestly, shocked me. So we filed. Civil court. The lawsuit was processed and the papers were served. They still didn't call. Didn't write. But 3 days later, I was at my desk at work when I noticed movement in the lobby. I looked up and felt my stomach twist, not from fear, but secondhand embarrassment. My mom stood in the doorway, my dad behind her, holding his phone like he was about to film a hostage negotiation. I walked to the glass, met their eyes, and didn't even bother opening the door. I mouthed, "You can't be here." My manager appeared at my side and asked, "Everything okay?" "Yes," I said flatly, and they finally left. That night, my phone lit up with Mia's number. I picked up, and she didn't waste a second. "You actually filed? Are you serious, Oscar? You're suing your own parents over what? A couple grand? You should be ashamed of yourself." Then, click. No follow-up. No attempt at conversation. I didn't explain myself. Why would I? To people who saw me as nothing but an ATM? A week later, an email came in from their lawyer. So they were finally taking it seriously. His tone was professional, but I could read between the lines. They wanted this gone. Fast. We set up a virtual meeting. He tried to talk circles at first, smoothing things over, but eventually got to the point. "They're willing to settle," he said. "If you agree to drop the lawsuit." I leaned forward. "How much?" He hesitated. "Half. 15,150. I laughed. Not a joyful laugh, more like the kind that sneaks out when you're exhausted and disgusted at the same time. "No deal," I said. "I want the full amount. Plus 2,000 in damages." He frowned. 2,000? For what? "For the stunt they pulled," I said coolly. "Lying to me, stringing me along, making it clear they never intended to pay. You want it to disappear? Then pay." He said he'd have to talk to them and get back to us. Another week of silence. Then, out of nowhere, an email. Attached was a PDF, proof of transfer. $12,300. Every cent of what they owed. No apology. No note. Just cold numbers on a screen. I stared at it for a long time. I thought I'd feel vindicated, maybe even relieved. But all I felt was this, silence. Heavy. Like the slam of a door behind you that you know isn't ever going to open again. I thought that was it. The end of the story. But I underestimated Mia. And I never saw what Uncle Mark was about to do. I hadn't heard a word from Mark since that day at the diner. No calls to say he knew I'd filed. No texts when the money hit my account. Silence. Then, out of nowhere, a week later, ping. "Come by the house Sunday. Need to talk. Everyone will be there." I stared at the message like it was written in another language. Everyone didn't sound good. It sounded like an ambush. I typed back, "Is this about the lawsuit?" He replied with just 4 words. "It's time to clear the air." I almost didn't go. My gut told me it'd be another round of guilt trips dressed up as family talks. But Mark had been the only one honest with me. The only one who hadn't tried to sugarcoat or play both sides. For that reason alone, I went. When I pulled up, the driveway was already crowded. Mia's car, my parents, even my aunt's little silver sedan. I parked down the street, heart pounding, guard up as high as it could go. Inside, they were all seated like a jury waiting for the defendant to arrive. Mark stood near the center, posture stiff, almost like he was running a 12-step meeting. My mom wouldn't look at me. My dad gave me the smallest nod, like I was some stranger at a bus stop. Mia smirked, eyes sharp, waiting for the show to start. Mark's voice cut through the tension. We're not leaving this room until we talk about what happened. And until some apologies are made. My mom scoffed. My dad leaned back, arms folded like he was gearing up for war. Mia rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might faint. Mark turned to my parents. His voice was steady, almost surgical. You two took money from your son, lied to him, and laughed behind his back about never paying it back. That's not just bad parenting. That's disgraceful. The room froze. Then my mom stood, chin lifted. We raised him. Fed him. Paid for everything. And now he acts like we're strangers. Like we didn't give him everything we had. Mark didn't blink. That's not a debt he owes for life. She turned to me, eyes blazing. You had the money, and instead of helping us, you made a scene. You humiliated us. What kind of son does that? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have words, but because it wouldn't matter. I saw it in her face. She believed it. She truly believed I owed her everything. My money, my silence, my patience, my dignity. Mark tried to pull it back together. Asked them to apologize. Said maybe we could move forward, wipe the slate clean. My dad crossed his arms, stone-faced. We don't need a son who treats us like enemies. If he wants to cut us off, fine. But don't expect us to chase him. That was it. I stood, gave Mark a small nod, and walked out. 1 week later, I went back, not to talk. This time, I brought a friend from work. He waited in the car while I walked to the door. My dad opened it, surprise flickering across his face. I held out the keys to the car I'd given him 2 years earlier. Consider it returned, I said. Time you bought your own. He didn't respond. I didn't wait for one. I turned and walked away. Since that day, I haven't spoken to any of them. Not Mia. Not my mom. Not my dad. Just Mark, and occasionally my aunt. The first few days after handing back the car, I braced myself for the blow-up. A phone call. A screaming match. Something ugly. But it never came. Not even a sarcastic text from Mia. Nothing. The silence was deafening at first. It felt like holding my breath, waiting for the explosion that never arrived. Then a week passed. Then another. Still nothing. And slowly, I started to breathe. I started waking up lighter, sleeping deeper, without that invisible weight on my chest. The constant pressure I hadn't even noticed before, the expectation that at any moment, they'd call, demanding more, reminding me of what I owed. Now, it was just me. For the first time in years, it was just me. Mark called me that weekend. No small talk. No, how are you holding up? Just a quiet voice on the other end of the line saying, they've gone quiet, haven't they? I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Yeah, they'll stay that way, at least until they need something again. We talked for a while. He filled me in on what happened after I walked out that night. My dad called me lost, ungrateful. My mom cried, not out of guilt, not out of shame, just because she couldn't believe I'd embarrassed them. Mia, apparently, had gone on a full-blown rant about how I'd made them look stupid in front of the entire extended family. Not once, did they mention the money they stole. Not once did they ask themselves if they'd done wrong. All they cared about was how I reacted. How I made them look. Mark admitted he didn't defend me. He just sat back, let them rant until the room ran out of steam, then left. Hasn't been back since. My aunt, his wife, didn't hold back though. She told them flat out, you brought this on yourselves. They didn't take that well either. A few days later, I got something in the mail. An envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photo, me, my parents, and Mia at a barbecue almost 10 years ago. We were all smiling, paper plates in our hands, sun shining, like nothing had ever gone wrong. On the back, written in handwriting I knew too well, this is what matters. Remember who you are. I held that photo for a long time. My throat tightened. For a second, I almost let myself feel it. But it wasn't an apology, it was bait. A reminder that I was one of them. A lure to reel me back in. I tore it straight down the middle and dropped it in the trash. The following week, a cousin I barely spoke to messaged me on Facebook. Wanted to hear my side. I ignored it. Then another cousin reached out. He said he'd spoken to my mom, claimed she was heartbroken. Said she just wanted her son back. That phrase wouldn't leave my head, her son back. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about missing me. It was about control. They didn't want me back. They wanted their leverage back. And the funny thing? My bank account was finally quiet. No surprise charges. No fake emergencies. No Venmo requests out of nowhere. Just stillness. A few nights later, I grabbed dinner with Mark. He ordered a steak. I stuck with pasta. We didn't talk about the lawsuit, or the car, or that photo in the trash. For once, it was just normal. But as we were finishing up, Mark set his fork down and looked straight at me. Mia's not done, he said. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She's still talking, he said. Rallying people. Telling anyone who'll listen that you ruined everything. That it was never about money. I almost laughed, but his face was serious. She says she's going to make sure the family knows who you really are. I leaned back in my chair. Smirked. Let her. Mark nodded slowly. Just, be ready. She's not done taking shots. I paid for dinner that night. Not because I had to, not because I owed him, but because I wanted to. Because unlike them, Mark never mistook my kindness for weakness. And unlike them, he stayed. It didn't take long. Barely a week after dinner with Mark, the smear campaign started. At first, it was subtle. I got tagged in vague Facebook posts, old family friends I hadn't seen since high school suddenly sharing quotes about loyalty and betrayal. I rolled my eyes and ignored it. Then came the direct messages. A girl I barely remembered from childhood church events slid into my inbox. Hey, I heard what's going on. Are you really suing your own parents? I don't want to judge, but wow. I didn't reply. The posts kept coming. Someone even shared a photo of Mia standing proudly with my parents under the brand new roof. The caption read, "When family turns their back on you, you still stand strong, grateful for love that doesn't come with a price tag." Subtle, right? Classy. It was obvious what Mia was doing, building her stage for a final act. She wanted to play the dutiful daughter, my parents the wounded martyrs, and me? I was cast as the cold-hearted outsider who let money destroy the family. Here's the thing, by then, I didn't care. But Mark did. One Sunday, he invited me to dinner. Just him, my aunt, a quiet meal. No surprises, no ambush. When I arrived, he handed me his phone. On the screen was a group chat Mia had created. She'd pulled in cousins from both sides of the family, a few uncles, even people who barely qualified as relatives. Her first message? A wall of text. She accused me of tearing the family apart with lawsuits and ultimatums, called me unstable, bitter, manipulative. Claimed I'd threatened our parents. She even dragged Mark into it, saying I'd somehow twisted him against them. Mark hadn't replied. He'd let her spew her script unchecked. But now he looked me in the eye and said, "I'm putting a stop to this. Not for you. For me. I'm not going to sit back while she rewrites the story." The following week, he called a family meeting. But this one was different. It was at his house, under his rules. And only people who agreed to listen, really listen, were welcome. I didn't want to go. Honestly, I was exhausted. He told me I didn't have to, but I went. When I walked in, the room was smaller than before. My aunt was there. 2 cousins. An uncle I hadn't spoken to in years. Noticeably absent? My parents. And Mia. Mark stood tall in his own living room, calm and steady. He laid out the entire story, the money, the contract, the silence, the lies. He even read pieces of the contract aloud, his voice cutting through the air like a judge. Then he told them about what he'd overheard, my parents laughing about how they'd never pay me back. He didn't exaggerate. Didn't dramatize. Just the truth, stripped bare. And then he said something I hadn't expected to hear. I stood by for years while they leaned on Oscar like he was a second income. I saw it. I stayed quiet. But I won't let Mia poison this family just because he finally had the courage to say no. Silence followed. Heavy. But not hostile. One cousin nodded slowly. Another muttered they weren't surprised. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to closure. I stood and said, "I'm not here for sympathy. I'm not here for sides. I just wanted the truth out. And now it is. I'm done explaining myself." On my way out, Mark pressed a small envelope into my hand. He said he didn't want to bring it up in front of everyone. Inside was a handwritten note from his wife, along with a simple grocery gift card. The note read, "For all the dinners you missed because you were busy helping everyone else. Now it's your turn." I sat in my car for a long time, holding that card. It wasn't about the money, it was about someone finally seeing me. That night, I went home and blocked every number except Mark's and my aunt's. Whatever came next from my parents or Mia didn't matter anymore. They could scream into their echo chamber forever. I wasn't listening. Update, 9:30 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. The apartment was quiet, the kind of stillness you only notice late at night. Then, knock, knock. I checked the peephole. It was Mia. Not just Mia, Mia standing there with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, like someone who didn't plan on going home again. I opened the door halfway. Didn't say a word. She looked different. Not smug, not dramatic. Just tired. Her voice was flat when she said, "I need a place to stay." For a second, I almost laughed. I thought this had to be a trick, some kind of setup. I half expected a camera crew to pop out from the stairwell. But no. She just stood there. Silent. Not moving. Not blinking. "My roommate kicked me out," she finally added. Long story. I didn't know where else to go. I told her no. She didn't argue. Didn't beg. Just stood there a moment longer, like she was waiting for something to change. Then she nodded once, turned, and walked back down the hallway. I closed the door, leaned against it, and just stood there, trying to process what had happened. The next morning, Mark called. I told him about the visit. He didn't sound surprised. "Yeah," he said. "She's burned some bridges lately. Your parents aren't helping her either. They're struggling with the mortgage payments. I think they assumed you'd come back. That eventually, you'd fold." That hit harder than I expected. Not because I felt guilty, but because even after everything, they still believed I'd cave. That the guilt would creep back in and I'd show up with a check and a smile. They hadn't learned a thing. A few days later, I saw her again. She was sitting alone outside a coffee shop near my building. She didn't notice me. She was hunched over her phone, shoulders slumped, looking nothing like the smug cousin who once smirked at me over housewarming plans. No gloss. No fire. Just someone who'd run out of options. I didn't approach her. Whatever story she had to tell now, whatever excuse, apology, or plea, I didn't need to hear it. And the strangest part wasn't that she came to me. It wasn't that she was unraveling. It was that I didn't feel anything. Not anger. Not pity. Just, done. And for the first time in years, that felt like peace.